Ancient Egypt began as a narrow ribbon of life along the Nile, surrounded by blistering desert. Each year, the river flooded, laying down rich black soil that made farming possible in an otherwise harsh land. Long before pyramids, small farming villages dotted the Nile Valley. Local chiefs and clan leaders organized irrigation, settled disputes, and offered gifts to local gods for protection. Over time, two main regions emerged, Upper Egypt in the south and Lower Egypt in the northern delta. Each had its own crown, its own capital, and its own rulers. Around 3100 BCE, a ruler we call Narmer or Menez brought Upper and Lower Egypt together. Later traditions remembered him as the king who wore both crowns and began Egypt's long pharaonic story. Early kings presented themselves as living gods, especially linked to Horus, the falcon. Pharaoh wasn't just a political ruler, he was the keystone holding earth, heaven, and Nile in balance. As the state grew more complex, scribes began recording taxes, offerings, and royal deeds in early hieroglyphs. Writing helped pharaohs project their power along the length of the Nile. The earliest kings were buried in mastaba tombs, rectangular, flat-topped structures with underground chambers. These tombs were already elaborate attempts to prepare for the afterlife. Egyptian life revolved around an idea of cosmic order, justice, and balance. Pharaoh and priests were supposed to maintain Ma'at so the Nile would flood, the sun would rise, and society would remain steady. Unification turned clusters of villages into one kingdom stretching hundreds of kilometers along the river. Egypt began to think of itself as a single land under a single divine king. By the end of Egypt's earliest dynasties, the things that would define it for millennia were in place: pharaohs, scribes, temples, and the river that made it all possible. The Old Kingdom saw kings ruling from Memphis and project pharaonic power farther than ever before. Wealth from agriculture, quarries, and trade poured into royal projects. Architects like Imhotep experimented with stacked mastabes, creating the first step pyramids. These towering tombs were both monuments and stairways to the sky for the soul of the king. Under pharaohs like Khufu and Khafre, workers built huge, smooth-sided pyramids at Giza. These monuments became the most famous symbols of ancient Egypt, visible for miles across the desert. Modern research suggests that pyramid workers were not slave gangs, but teams of farmers and specialists who labored during the Nile flood season. Their villages near Giza had bakeries, breweries, and cemeteries of proud workers. Old Kingdom pharaohs presented themselves as near-absolute divine rulers. Temples, priests, and officials all focused on maintaining their mortuary cults and the cosmic order they embodied. Artists carved lifelike statues and reliefs to preserve the king's image for eternity. These works followed strict conventions, making sure Pharaoh always appeared strong, youthful, and in control. Deep inside tombs, priests and scribes carved pyramid texts, spells, and instructions to help the king's soul reach the heavens and join the gods. Over time, droughts, economic strains, and powerful local officials eroded the king's absolute control. The Old Kingdom's giant pyramid projects faded, and Egypt slipped into instability. As central authority collapsed, local rulers and rival dynasties competed for power. This first intermediate period showed that even mighty Egypt could fracture. Despite political chaos, Egyptian culture, writing, and farming continued. The ideas of Pharaoh, Ma'at, and the Nile's cycle remained ready for a new dynasty to build on. After generations of division, rulers from Thebes reunited Egypt in what we call the Middle Kingdom. They presented themselves as caring, active kings who listened to their people. Middle Kingdom pharaohs built fortresses at Egypt's borders, especially in Nubia to the south, controlling trade routes and guarding against raids. New canals and irrigation works improved farming, stabilizing food supplies and strengthening the state. Egypt returned to a more predictable rhythm. Scribes wrote down stories, wisdom texts, and tales of heroes and magical journeys. These works let us see Egyptian hopes and worries beyond royal inscriptions. Middle Kingdom tombs often show vivid scenes of daily life hunting, fishing, weaving, and banquets, alongside religious images. They reveal what people valued in both this world and the next. Late in the Middle Kingdom, outsiders we call the Hyksos established themselves in the Delta, bringing new weapons and chariots. Their presence shook Egyptian confidence in its borders. Egypt again fragmented into rival dynasties, with Hyksos power in the north and native rulers holding out in the south. It was another reminder that pharaonic unity could crack. Southern kings from Thebes fought to expel the Hyksos and reunite Egypt. Their campaigns set the stage for the powerful new kingdom. With the Hyksos driven out, Egypt emerged more militarized and outward-looking. The new kingdom would turn Egypt into an empire beyond its old borders. Through crisis and revival, the core ideas of Egypt, Pharaoh, Nile, gods, and afterlife endured. They were ready to power a new phase of expansion and grandeur. New Kingdom pharaohs like Thutmose III and Ramses II ruled in Egypt that extended influence into Nubia and the Levant, collecting tribute and commanding chariot armies. Hatshepsut ruled as a female pharaoh, donning the traditional regalia and promoting trade expeditions. Her reign emphasized prosperity and monumental building projects. Priests and pharaohs expanded vast temple complexes at Karnak and Luxor, focusing worship on gods like Amun and linking divine favor to royal success. At Kadesh, Ramses II fought the Hittites in one of history's earliest well-documented battles. Although no clear winner emerged, Egyptian accounts depicted Ramses as a heroic charioteer. New Kingdom pharaohs shifted from giant pyramids to hidden tombs in the Valley of the Kings. They covered these tombs with detailed paintings and texts about the journey through the underworld. Mummification aimed to preserve the body so the soul could live forever. Elaborate coffins, funerary masks, and jars protected and honored the deceased on their journey. Papyrus scrolls known as the Book of the Dead contained spells and guidance to help ordinary people navigate the dangers of the afterlife, not just pharaohs. New Kingdom Egypt exchanged letters, gifts, and marriages with other great powers, joining a diplomatic world that spanned from Anatolia to Mesopotamia. Empire brought wealth, but also stretched armies and resources. Egypt's far-flung borders were hard to defend when drought, rebellion, or foreign pressure rose. The new kingdom shone brilliantly, but beneath the temples and victories lay vulnerabilities, wealth concentrated at the top, powerful priests, and dependence on stable borders. Large temples were considered the actual homes of the gods. Priests bathed statues, changed their clothes, and offered food, as if caring for living beings. Ordinary Egyptians worshipped at local shrines, prayed at small household altars, and joined festival processions that carried god statues through the streets. Rich temple estates made some priesthoods powerful. In the New Kingdom, the priests of Amun at Thebes controlled vast lands and wealth, influencing politics as well as religion. Egyptians worshipped many gods, sun gods, sky gods, river gods, gods of writing, and gods of the dead. People might favor different deities, but all fit into a large overlapping system. To Egyptians, death was not an end, but a dangerous journey. The soul had to face tests, monsters, and judges before reaching a peaceful afterlife. In the famous weighing of the heart scene, a person's heart was weighed against the feather of Ma'at. If the heart was too heavy with wrongdoing, it was devoured. If not, the soul passed on. Festivals brought color and joy to Egyptian cities, as god statues traveled from temples on bark shrines, accompanied by music, feasting, and temporary breaks from routine. Magic spells and amulets promised protection from snakes, illness, and bad luck. Even simple people might wear an eye amulet or recite a charm before traveling. To Egyptians, life was a careful balancing act between order and chaos. Ritual, law, and obedience kept the dangerous forces of the universe at bay. Religion was not just private belief. It was the glue that bound Egypt together, legitimizing Pharaoh, guiding law, and giving meaning to the cycles of flood and drought. Pharaoh Akhenaten tried to reshape Egyptian religion by focusing on the Aten, the sun disk, above all other gods. He moved the capital and built new temples with open roofs. Akhenaten's era, often called the Amarna period, favored softer, more elongated artistic styles and intimate family scenes of the royal household. Many Egyptians resisted Akhenaten's changes, confused or angered by the sidelining of long-established gods. Priests of Amun lost influence and wealth. After Akhenaten's death, a young king, Tutankhamun, restored older religious practices. He moved the court back to traditional centers and reopened temples. Tutankhamun's relatively small tomb remained undisturbed for centuries. When excavated in modern times, its treasure offered a rare, intact look at a pharaoh's burial. Ramses II ruled for decades, building colossal statues and inscribing his victories on temple walls. Later ages remembered him as the model of a mighty pharaoh. Late New Kingdom pharaohs faced mysterious groups called the Sea Peoples, as well as internal struggles. Egypt defended itself, but emerged weakened. After about 1100 BCE, Egypt entered another long era of divided rule, with high priests, regional kings, and foreign dynasties sharing and contesting power. Libyan and Nubian rulers at times took Egypt's throne, adopting Egyptian titles and rituals while bringing their own traditions. Later, powerful Assyrian and then Persian empires conquered Egypt, adding it to larger imperial systems. Egyptian elites adapted, but native pharaonic power shrank. Alexander the Great conquered Egypt in 332 BCE and presented himself as a traditional pharaoh. After his death, Greek-speaking rulers, the Ptolemies, took control. The Ptolemaic dynasty blended Greek and Egyptian cultures, building temples in Egyptian style while using Greek in administration and scholarship. Cleopatra VII, the last active ruler of Ptolemaic Egypt, spoke several languages and saw herself as both Greek queen and Egyptian pharaoh. She navigated alliances and rivalries with Rome's powerful leaders. After Cleopatra's defeat and death, Egypt became a province of the Roman Empire. The long line of independent pharaohs finally ended, though Egyptian temples and priests lived on for centuries. Under Rome, Egyptian gods like Isis and Serapis spread throughout the Mediterranean. Egypt remained spiritually influential even as political control shifted. Over the following centuries, many temples fell silent as new religions and new rulers rose. Hieroglyphs stopped being written and much of their meaning was forgotten. Tombs were robbed in ancient times and later centuries alike. Mummies and artifacts were prized, feared, and sometimes sold as curiosities, long before careful archaeology began. Napoleon's invasion brought European scholars to Egypt, who documented monuments and discovered the Rosetta Stone, a key to understanding hieroglyphs again. In the 1820s, Jean-François Champollion used the Rosetta Stone to crack hieroglyphs, opening a flood of new knowledge about ancient Egypt's own words. Modern archaeologists, sometimes careful and sometimes not, excavated tombs and temples, filling museums worldwide with Egyptian artifacts that still amaze visitors. Pyramids, sphinxes, and hieroglyphs have become global symbols of mystery and antiquity, appearing in movies, games, and art around the world. Ancient Egypt ended as a pharaonic state, but the land and people continued under new religions and governments, layering new histories on top of old ones. Our tiny explorers remind us that ancient Egypt was not just pyramids and mummies, but a long, changing civilization shaped by farmers, scribes, priests, queens, conquerors, and foreign visitors. Its story shows how power can build great monuments, how religion and environment shape a society, and how even mighty empires eventually give way to new worlds.